Welcome back to Switch to Linux. It is great to be back in the office after our brief trip away. And I do want to jump right back in talking a little bit about AI and Linux to see some of the chatter that has been going on and provide a few of my opinions about what may be going on in this world. And we are actually going to start by mentioning this article here from It's Foss. And in this article here, it says, Linus Torvalds spent years dismissing AI only to vouch for it. I think that the title itself of this article is just a little disingenuous. And the reason I bring that up is because, people are allowed to change their opinions and people are allowed to wait for more information. Because Linus Torvalds, in the past, right when AI was ramping up, notably stopped to slow down to wait to see what would happen. In those early days, and not quite as much now, but in those early days, AI was all hype. Everyone's like, AI, it's so amazing, it can do absolutely everything. And then you get the most nonsense garbage pushed out of it you can possibly imagine. And while it is getting better and we are starting to understand a little bit better about, what are better positive uses of AI versus more negative uses of AI, these are kind of important things for us to stop and consider. And in this article here, they're kind of going through the history of Linus Torvalds' ideas and, starting by making the statement he said is AI is 90% marketing, and was it 9% marketing? I think is 10% reality is what the statement was. And, you have to remember that he was making some of these discussions back in 2023. Dude, AI was brand new. Let's see. I think it was 2024 is when Linus Torvalds actually said that at one of the events. And the thing is that AI moves so progressively fast, and you younger people in the audience may not understand how fast technology is moving these days. When I was a kid, we had, 8 tracks were on their way out and cassette tapes came in, and cassette tapes dominated our means of listening to music from the time we could remember in the early 80s on up until, CDs kind of started to roll out, but any new technology, any new invention took a long time for the technology to catch on. And so while CDs were initially released and you could get a few of the biggest blockbusters on CD in the late 80s, early 90s, most people did not have CD players until the mid 90s. I was the cutting edge of movies. I had laser discs and DVDs. I had one of the first ever models of a DVD player on a computer. It required 2 separate cards. I had to have the DVD player itself, and I had to buy a separate PCI decoder card for it. It was like several $100s back in late 1990s money in order to run DVDs. And that was, of course, just playing them, not recording them. And then, CDs came out. Even the MP3 technology rolled out very slowly. And as newer technologies and newer versions of things are rolling out, the technology is snowballing itself. That the AI, 3-4 years ago, in fact, I don't even think AI is 4 years old now. Is it 3 or 4 years old since ChatGPT was first released, the first consumer model of an AI? And now we're to the point where we can do AI models to do just about everything. And we don't always understand, especially in this crazy world where, you see somebody you don't like and then you dig through their Twitter feeds, and 14 years ago, he said something that's uncouth by standards now that wasn't 14 years ago. And then we want to cancel a guy over something he said over a decade ago. Well, the thing is that the things in our world change and progress. And that's what Linus Torvalds is mentioning, because ultimately it boils down to, he's at a conference recently and he said there's a lot of anti-AI sentiment. And he says, just down here, he says, just fork it or walk away. Now, here's the balance here, because remember, Linux released guidelines that you could use AI for portions of doing your coding. Like So suppose that you know that you need to run a for loop with 18 different variations. Do we really have to manually code out 18 variations? Can you tell the AI, hey, write a for loop with these 18 variations? The thing spits out the code. And if you are a good programmer, you can look at this code and you can evaluate. Of course, if you're a good programmer, you may not be doing a for loop with 18 conditions, but I'm not a coder. What can I say? That, my C++ classes from the 90s are starting to show. What can I say? But the point is that there's portions, if you're doing coding right, you can use AI for some of the more repetitive monkey tasks. If you could train a monkey to hit the keys and go, ooh, 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 give me a banana, then you can probably train the AI to do such things. And so we don't necessarily want to completely banish it in those rudimentary cases. But what we want to avoid is people coming in with no real coding experience with a grand idea and going, I got a great idea. I don't know how to program. Hey, AI, vibe code this. And then you submit it right to the patch. That still remains outside the scope of what the Linux team is going to accept. All right. So everybody is still responsible for everything. And so this isn't him changing his mind. And according to the article here, he spent years dismissing it only to vouch for it. No, he is seeing the way it can be used and the way it can't be used and helping to establish rules and guidelines by which AI could be used. Now, do I think the AI is going to destroy society? Absolutely. But, I'd rather be more in the upper echelons than the lower echelons when that destruction comes, and so we have to recognize the appropriate uses versus the disappropriate uses, and I use AI for a couple tiny things on completely self-hosted models. And that is the type of stuff that if you get good at it, in fact, one of the reasons I'm doing some of that is one of my clients does blog posts. And we used to pay them a certain amount of money. And then he looks down and says, hey, there's this AI that could do this. And so he fires the person writing the post, which is horrible. Well, if I don't have some degree of, hey, we got to make these things better, I'm going to get fired then too, And so I said, when, of course, he was just like, hey, give me an article on this, and then no other further prompts or anything else, and sending me ChatGPT's typical, 300 words of deeply bullet pointed nonsense. And I'd be like, I can't use this. But it's like, you know what? Let me set up my own AI server. Let me do proper prompt engineering, feed into the system. I'm still charging the same amount. So we're still able to cut our costs down by $20 or so per post, but we still get good quality posts that I feed in with proper prompt engineering and get a proper type of article, and I make sure it's edited and I make sure it's good. That is a case where AI can be useful. And so that really is where he's getting at, is recognizing places that it can be useful while also recognizing that it can indeed destroy the world. And the people that are like, absolutely no AI, absolutely anywhere, ever and ever and ever, forever, amen. At that point in time, you got to stop and say, I don't know what to tell you. And would we be better off without it? Absolutely. But the toothpaste is out of the tube. The cat is out of the bag, and good luck getting any of them back in. And that's really where he is getting at. But AI itself has caused a lot of other problems, because this was a fascinating article from OMG Ubuntu looking at FlatHub, of course, basically banned anybody from just submitting AI slop. And this actually is an interesting article, because they looked at these AI submitted things, because, you get this grand idea and then you push it out and then you never update it. And you never keep up with it, and it doesn't become a project. And people just think you vibe code something one time and you think, oh, it's done. It's done. I don't have to do anything with it. And doing some research, what some people found is that the vast majority of AI coded programs, they never get any updates. They never remain active. They come out with some neat idea. They push themselves out. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of people are using them, and then nobody ever pushes an update. Security vulnerabilities all through them, because, they were vibe coded. And then what ends up happening is we have radically insecure systems because of abandonware taking over platforms. And so when FlatHub banned AI-coded app submissions last month, some critics warned the platform was denying the future by dismissing a new wave of Vibe-coded software as out-and-out slop. And what happened, though, is Linux developer, I will probably not get this name right, is it Evangelos Patikiris, developed Tuba, Turntable, and others, did some digging around. He looked at 120 code repositories whose pull requests for inclusion on FlatHub were rejected because of the heavy AI usage given an AI slop tag. Of all of those that were rejected, 88 of them are under no active development at all, and many have been deleted. Only 32 of them still are showing signs of life, making it a 73% abandon rate for this software. So that is really a challenge, that when you have a platform that allows people to just come on in and just dump a bunch of data, dump an application, and then you don't think about updates and security changes and vibe coded hallucinations and other things, then what ends up happening is people start installing it, and then you're just like, I don't have time to deal with that. And it becomes abandonware, and it's never updated. And then we have a situation where otherwise what could be good code turns out to be, something that that produces a way for malware and infections or vulnerabilities to be introduced into your computer at large. And so they actually did a pretty good job here. So they were looking at here at abandonware in an article there. But what I thought of when I read this article immediately is way back a decade ago when I was talking about the dangers of snaps. And yes, we're going to keep on coming back to this because, even It's Foss did an article saying I was trying to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And one of the things I had actually said in one of my videos was that the Snap Store is going to start looking like the Windows Store. If you remember back in the Windows Store with the phone, with Windows 8.0 and 8.1 first came out, a whole lot of people that didn't seem to have any real good experience started developing a whole lot of programs and dumping them into the Windows Store. And then people were just like, oh, Windows, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And you end up with a whole bunch of junk that never got updated. And then it never seems to be cleared out. And I actually said, hey, this is going to be a problem. Well, guess what? If you go on over to the Snap Store, and the one thing that I remember using as my example was Simple Screen Recorder, which you can go to any Ubuntu-based distribution that still uses snaps, and you can install either of these two unofficial versions of Simple Screen Recorder. Neither of these is put together with the acknowledgement or endorsement of the original author of Simple Screen Recorder. They both appear to be just Chinese developers, and I have not seen any evidence that they're with any major projects. So here's this one here. This one here has last been updated over a decade, almost a decade ago, excuse me, May of 2017. It is now August of 2026. At some point in time, maybe Snap should simply remove Snap applications that have not been updated in, I don't know, a decade? Can we please remove this out so some poor person doesn't come by, install this nonsense, and be like, Ubuntu sucks? I mean, Ubuntu sucks. We can agree with that. Oh, we probably don't. I know I'm making fun of Ubuntu. There's times and places for it. But, Tuxedo Linux disagrees. Anyway, when an application like this has not been updated, which by the way, Ubuntu doesn't even ship with X anymore. Maybe get the X-dependent apps also out of Ubuntu. It won't work either. The other one is a little bit better. This is the other Simple Screen Recorder. This is that unofficial one. And so this one here, there's actually two versions. We look at this. We have a latest update of November of 2026, less than a year ago. That's good. We're getting it there. But it is still a snap package for an application or for a distro that has dropped X, the core component of it, and I haven't installed this to see. I'm a little scared to, if I'm honest. But the challenge here is that you have a lot of this type of software that this one here at least has been updated in the last year. This one here, 2017, let's get this out of here. And that is exactly what FlatHub is trying to avoid is this circumstance whereby people can just dump a bunch of stuff in here and then forget about it. And then now Flatpak is going to be stuck with all this software. And then there's problems if you remove it. And then do you pull it from somebody's system, or do you allow it to just sit there? And even though it's a vulnerability and then somebody gets a malware infection by an insecure Flatpak, and then they start blaming Flatpak for it. Well, they were in a situation where, okay, I either have to go in and pull the thing off, like, Amazon pulling 1984 off of people's Kindles, which was parody in real life itself. Yes, that really happened. Or they have to run into a situation where they fill their platform full of so much abandonware that it becomes this hotbed of vulnerabilities and backdoors, like the Snap Store. And so I think that I do agree with the sentiments here of OMG Ubuntu, that they actually did a pretty good job to say, yeah, we just don't want vibe coded crap in FlatHub. But hey, you know what? Flatpak is really cool. You are perfectly able to create your own Flatpak based repository, and with your Flatpak based repository, you are absolutely welcome to install any form of junk in there that you want. And it's just not in Flatpak. So not the FlatHub anyway. So let me know your thoughts about all this. Do you agree with the team absolutely no AI in Linux ever? Or do you agree with the, yeah, it can be used in appropriate times? Let me know your thoughts and a little bit of friendly debate in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.